Good evening. Welcome along once again for Ozarks Tonight. I'm David Oliver. Well, certainly right now, there's a lot of attention being paid in our country to the government shutdown and the fight over that southern border wall with Mexico. Obviously, you heard from the president and Democratic leaders during a primetime address last night, and there have been new developments happening today in this ongoing battle. We want to get some perspective on that with our Color 10 political analyst, Dr. Brian Calfano, who joins me here for the broadcast this evening. Brian, good to see you as always.
Great to see you, David. Good evening.
Okay, so let's start with today's developments. You know, the president invited congressional leaders up to the White House. They had a meeting this afternoon. Both sides threw up their hands and pretty much walked away. In fact, it's been reported that the president walked out of that meeting and said, "We have nothing to discuss." What are your thoughts on that news today?
Well, it's obviously not positive for all of those who are going without pay. If they're working in any kind of federal agency or department where the funding for their endeavors is up in the air, it may be a very long time before we see some kind of resolution on this. And this is disproportionately affecting a lot of vulnerable people in the country, including veterans, including those who rely on housing and urban development dollars to be able to afford their rent, and including those who want to enjoy America's national parks. And so there's lots of different moving parts to all of this. But certainly, it's not good news for the thousands of federal workers who are not going to be able to meet a lot of the bills they got to pay every month. And the other thing is, it's not really good for the country. I mean, whether your position on this is that we should have a barrier across every inch of the southern border, or whether you see it a little bit differently from the president and certain Republicans, this is really something that should not be a factor that closes our federal government. This is getting to be really about throwing political mud at the opponent and trying to make it stick, rather than trying to find a solution that benefits everyone and not just one's narrow interests.
And you know, it was almost unprecedented last night to see the events unfold during primetime evening television viewing, because the president went on TV and didn't really say anything new. The Democrats went on TV and didn't say anything new. What do you make of that?
Well, it's position taking. Look, the president has spent a good amount of political capital boxing himself into the position where either he has to deliver on some type of new barrier across most, if not all, of the southern border with Mexico, or he's going to have a hard time getting people who voted for him in 2016 to do it again in 2020. So he's backed himself into a political corner. Democrats sense that they're going to get as much, I guess, benefit out of this, if you can call it benefit, when the government is shut down, even if it's a partial shutdown like the one we have right now, because they see it as the president having to go out on a limb and in some way alienate people he needs to support him who are more in the middle politically, and maybe in fact weaken his position to go into a re-election campaign for 2020. So the Democrats don't have much of a reason to sort of give the president the rope to save himself with. They want to give him rope to hang himself with politically, and that's essentially where we're going with this. And so what you have is political theater. You have the president go out and make what usually is a speech that has some type of policy bona fide behind it, at least some kind of actual proposal that the country can sink its teeth into and at least debate. But like you said, David, last night there wasn't much substantive information coming from either side. And really, it's an open question right now as to which side is going to be the one that ends up flinching. If I had to bet my money on this, I'd say I'd wait a long time before thinking President Trump is going to cave on this one. I think this is his signature issue. He has to deliver some type of outcome that will benefit, in the eyes at least of those who support him in 2016, his base. And if he doesn't come up with that, I don't think he's really going to have much of a chance of re-election. He knows this. Democrats know this as well, and that's got us in the predicament that we're in.
You know, what's interesting, too, about last night's speech and the developments today is that we have been hearing a lot of rumblings that the president might invoke executive privilege and declare a national emergency, sideswipe Congress, get the money and build the wall without their support. And people kind of expected that we might hear something like that last night. He stopped short. He did not make that declaration last night. Why do you think he's kind of hedging back on that right now, after we've heard that that was a consideration?
I think it's telling that we have heard from Senator Blunt and we've heard from Representative Long. Their offices have sent us quotes that say that they support the president trying to secure the border. They want the government to be reopened at some point rather soon. But there's not any mention of let's also have the president exert this executive authority to be able to fund this border construction. And I think the reason for that is because even though they're both Republicans, they are members of the legislative branch. The president in this case would be usurping the power of the Congress to appropriate funds for different purposes of the federal government. And even though it's true the president can exercise authority in emergency situations, this is not an emergency that will be solved anytime soon. Even if you go down the road of buying into the idea that the southern border is an emergency type situation, it would take months, if not years, to complete the construction the president is proposing. So if it's really something of an emergent nature, what's being proposed now in no way takes care of that issue. And without saying so, I think Republicans in both the House and the Senate have signaled indirectly to the White House they are not on board with the idea of the president taking this unprecedented step to spend who knows what amount of money that the Pentagon would have available to it to construct this southern border wall the way the president envisions it. And let's also be clear, David, there are miles and miles, 700 or so, of existing border fence or structure that exists. So this proposal would be adding to existing wall and or replacing existing wall. And all of these are details that have to be worked out between the two sides. But I mean, at this point, why you don't see Congress jumping on the president's bandwagon and supporting this emergency declaration that he has floated making is because they don't support it in the numbers the president needs to make this a reality. And I think that's why he held back last night, and politically speaking, wisely so.
And if today is any indication, with both sides saying that the meeting at the White House was a waste of time, we're in for a long haul on this one. Dr. Brian Calfano, our Color 10 political analyst, good to see you as always. Thanks for being here, and we'll have much more here on Ozarks Tonight right after this quick break.